is the angel Gabriel. And I want you to really picture this. Let your imaginations go for a minute. There is a fairly large church on this end of Kent County that does a live nativity scene. We've done them in the past with the children. This is all done by adults. The angel Gabriel was played by a friend of mine who was about this tall. And I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but he was fairly rotund. Had this big old beard, and they strapped angel wings on him, put a zip line across the church, and the angel Gabriel came sliding in towards the nativity. And that's all the kids in that church talk about. Is how the angel Gabriel made his appearance. But they remembered it. We have 3 visitations on here from the angel Gabriel in our reading today. One of those visitations is with Zechariah. Zechariah was a priest. And at that time, if you were born into the family, the clan of Aaron, and you were male, you were a priest. There were so many priests that they literally had to draw lots. It was like a lottery to see who was going to get into the temple, do the sacrifice and the incense on behalf of the people. This happened to be Zechariah's big moment. And one of the questions it raises for me is, if this is his big moment, his chance to go into the temple, what if we only offered the Eucharist one time in your lifetime? What would you do to get there? Zechariah gave up a lot to finally be able to go into the temple and celebrate not the Eucharist, but the sacrifice on behalf of the people. Here comes the zip line. Here comes the angel, and says to Zechariah that he's going to be a father. Zechariah doesn't believe him. And so the angel makes it so that Zechariah cannot speak. He's mute. As he leaves the temple, the people are outside expecting him to come out with great joy and share what has happened inside. But he can't speak. And because he can't speak, they know that something very, very serious has happened. Something very holy happened with Zechariah in that temple. Let's fast forward 5 or 6 months. And there's Zechariah's wife, Elizabeth. 5 or 6 months along in her pregnancy. Now you have to remember that even though they were married, there's a little bit of difference between Elizabeth and Mary in this lesson. The woman's role at that time was pretty much not only to be a wife, to have children but to pretty much stay in the background. Zip line. Here comes the angel again. And the angel speaks in kind of a different way to Elizabeth. Elizabeth was barren. Elizabeth couldn't have kids. Elizabeth and her husband Zechariah were getting, let's just say, up in years. They were older folks. They couldn't have children. She doesn't believe that it's going to happen either. But all of a sudden, here she is, by a gift of God and the Holy Spirit, she is pregnant. And what does the angel say to her? That her son will be called John. Interesting. Mary becomes pregnant as a gift of the Holy Spirit. She's not married. When I was in high school, way back in the 60s, 1960s, you know, we lived in a society as such that when somebody became pregnant and they weren't married, they kind of disappeared. It wasn't talked about. There was a certain amount of shame that went with it. After a baby was born, the mother may come back to school. But there was a period that she just kind of disappeared. That's not the way it was with Elizabeth. But you'll notice one of the first lines in today's reading, it says that Mary set out with haste. Mary left quickly because she wasn't married, didn't know how to explain the fact that she was pregnant, didn't know exactly how to make anyone understand what was going on and how God was involved in her life. So she goes and she visits, and I want you to understand this too, that the distance that Mary traveled is supposed to be around 150 miles from her home. On foot, that's a long way. And yet, as soon as she walks into Elizabeth's house, she speaks, and John kicks his mother. That baby kicks. Now, you all know that I'm not a father, I'm not married, but I can only imagine what it is like to a mother and to a father who gets called over and says, feel this, and the baby's kicking, and you get that first, oh, that's got to be so amazing. There's something very real about that. You know, yes, you can be pregnant and you know it and you understand it, but suddenly there's life in there, and it's kicking. And then there's those times where you wish the baby would quit kicking also. But John begins to kick. And then we get the song of Mary, the Magnificat, the acknowledgement of God and the special place that these two ladies will have in Christianity. Gabriel has visited each of these three people. Each of them has been sent by God. Each of them in their own way have acknowledged God's presence in their lives. But each of them, as you read more about them, are also very humble people. None of them are wealthy. And I wonder sometimes what that looks like when we humble ourselves so much that we can really acknowledge God's presence not only in us but with us. Richard Rohr is a Roman Catholic priest. He's a writer. Excuse me. He is a writer, and I've been following his Advent devotional every day. And he describes Advent as like chasing butterflies. If you've ever gone out to the Frederick Meyer Gardens during their butterfly exhibit, there's butterflies flying all over the place. Try to catch one. It's not going to happen. They will get away from you. But what happens sometimes when you go and you just sit down and be quiet in those atriums full of butterflies? Sometimes the butterfly will choose you and will come and light on your shoulder, on your head, on your arms. The butterfly finds us when we're quiet and chooses us. And what does that being humble look like sometimes? For us this morning, it is simply gathering together in community of prayer. Remembering those who ask for our prayers and those who need our prayers. Sometimes being humble is simply being present and quiet in listening. And let the butterfly choose you. And you know, there's one other thing that Gabriel says at one point to all three of the people in today's lessons. We're going through all this hustle and bustle of trying to get ready for the secular version of Christmas. Who's going to run out of time? Probably in some aspects, all of us in some way. But Gabriel tells our three people today to do not fear. And as soon as John is born, joy and love surround Zechariah, and he can speak again. He can share that joy. He can share that love of God in a whole new way. Elizabeth has the baby, and she shares her joy with each and every one of us through John. Mary is still pregnant. And I wonder how, when she has her baby, we will humble ourselves and come to wherever that baby is, and how we will not fear because that baby is born for us. See you Thursday and find out.